What's up guys, and welcome to my 4.2 updated Argenti guide. Argenti is one of the 3 characters that were added to the pool of 50/50 losses to in the 4.2 update, and in this video I'm taking you over everything you do need to know in order to understand and build him, including a kit overview, best Lightcones, best Relics and planar ornaments, main stat and substat goals, and finally some general team building ideas.
Stuck grinding in Honkai Star Rail? Need stellar jades fast? We've got you covered. Head over to U7 Buy, your ultimate gaming hub for save fast and cheap in-game top-ups. Whether it's Star Rail or your other favorite games, U7 delivers instantly and players love it. Check out their Trustpilot reviews, they're actually top ranked. On the Honkai Star Rail direct top-up page, you can recharge your account in seconds. For example, 8080 Honorific shards cost $99.99 in the official store.
However, on U7 Buy, you can see the price is cheaper. When you head over to U7 Buy, you might notice that the storefront display prices currently match the in-game store, but don't worry, the magic happens at checkout. Once you click the buy now button, your total instantly drops to our actual discounted price only.
Just pick your server, enter UID, pay securely, and boom, your account is instantly loaded. Want extra savings? Use code PRETSR at checkout for 5% off, perfect for last minute pulls, battle passes, or surprising a friend. And here's a bonus. If you spend $80 a month on U7 Buy, you can grab the Honkai Star Rail Express Pass for only 1 cent, which is nearly free. Click on the link in my description, recharge fast, save more, and keep blazing those trails.
Argenti's basic attack does physical damage based off his attack to one designated enemy. His skill does physical damage based off his attack to all enemies. Argenti does have 2 ultimates. The first one, which is the main looping one, will consume 90 energy and do physical damage based off his attack to all enemies. And the one that you are able to use when having full energy will consume 180 energy and do physical damage at a higher multiplier of Argenti's attack to all enemies, and will further do damage for an extra 6 times, with each time doing physical damage based off Argenti's attack to a random enemy. Argenti's talent makes it to where every enemy target that Argenti hits using his basic attack, skill, or ultimate will regenerate Argenti's energy by 3 and grants him a stack of Apotheosis, increasing his crit rate by 2.5%. that stacks up to 10 times. So you can get up to a 25% increase to crit rate through his talent. His technique will inflict enemies within a set area with daze for 10 seconds. Dazed enemies do not actively attack the team. Entering combat with this technique active will do physical damage to all enemies equal to 80% of Argenti's attack and regenerate 15 energy for Argenti. For his traces, his A2 will immediately give Argenti a stack of Apotheosis at the start of the turn. His A4 will make it to where when enemy targets enter combat, immediately regenerates 2 energy for self. And his A6 makes Argenti do 15% more damage to enemies who currently have lower than 50% HP. For his Eidolons, his E1 will make each stack of Apotheosis increase his crit damage by 4%. His E2 will make it to where if the enemies on the field are 3 or more when ultimate is used, Argenti gets 40% attack for 1 turn. His E4 will make it to where at the start of the battle he gains 2 stacks of Apotheosis, and the maximum stack limit of Apotheosis increases by 2, so instead of 10 it's 12. And his E6 makes his ultimate ignore 30% of the enemy target's defense. For Lightcones, overall his best in slot is the Herta signature, providing 12% crit rate for the wearer. When the wearer uses ultimate, the wearer's skill and ultimate damage increases by 60% for 3 turns. After the wearer uses their ultimate, if energy consumed is 140 or greater, recovers 1 skill point. 12% crit rate makes him easier to build, although he does get a good amount of crit rate from his talent. He might have some teammates providing him crit rate as well, and now also the Lightcone, so it might make you overcap, or it could work in your favor where you focus a lot more on other stats like attack or crit damage. Focusing on his skill is also very nice because his ultimate is his main source of damage, but his skill also is a solid portion of damage as well. So getting a 60% increase to both when using your ultimate, and you'll always usually have uptime, especially in Pure Fiction. Unfortunately for this last part, this is not going to be utilized in his best mode, which is Pure Fiction, since you are spamming his lower costed ultimate way more. However, in something like MLC, if you are using the big ultimate, which usually performs better, then you would actually be getting the extra skill point refund, which can provide to be useful. So overall, the Herta signature is the best in slot. His own signature would be next, providing the wearer 36% crit damage. When the wearer uses ultimate, increases damage up by the wearer's ultimate based off their max energy, with each point of energy increasing ultimate damage up by 0.36%, and a max of 180 energy is taken into account. So crit damage boosts are going to be better since you can build crit rate a lot easier on this guy, and then using your ultimate will increase the damage based on max energy, and his max energy is 180, so you get the full damage percent of this, so you're focusing a lot on his ultimate, which is his main source of damage. It is unfortunate it doesn't focus on his skill at all, but you are getting the max maximum increase to his ultimate. So his ultimate is going to do more compared to other options. Unfortunately, it doesn't provide anything for his skill though. So 36% crit damage and a big damage percent boost for his ultimate would make this the second best option you can use. The Battle Pass Lightcone Today is Another Peaceful Day is also usable. Entering battle increases the wearer's damage based off their max energy, with each point increasing damage by 0.2%, with the max of 160 energy be taken into account, and at S5 it's at 0.4%. As I did mention with his signature, his maximum energy is 180, so you get the full damage percent of this. The upside of this is it impacts all his damage, as it's just a generic damage percent, so his skill and ultimate will be getting an effect. It's not going to be as big of an increase as opposed to the signature for his ultimate, but at least it is applying to his actual skill as well. So Today's Another Peaceful Day is another good option. The other Battle Pass icon, A Dream Scented in Wheat, also does work. 12% crit rate and ultimate and follow-up damage increase by the wearer for 24%. S5, it's 20% crit rate, 40% damage percent for both attacks, so making him easier to build. Unfortunately, it's not crit damage, and then the second part is mainly just for his ultimate. Unfortunately, he doesn't have a follow-up attack, so an ultimate damage increase by 40%. So if you do have this is also very much usable. Specifically, mainly in Pure Fiction, Night on the Milky Way would work, with 9% attack increase for the wearer for every enemy on the field up to 5. Inflicting Weakness Break will increase the damage dealt by the wearer by 30% for 1 turn. So up to a 45% increased attack in Pure Fiction, that's going to be permanent. In other modes, it would be a lot more inconsistent, so that's why I mainly mentioned in Pure Fiction, because even with full uptime, it's not better than the other options. And in Pure Fiction, Weakness Break against anyone that is physical is very easy. When there's enemies on the side with physical weakness, one ultimate is usually enough, since they have a much weaker toughness bar. So that's why keeping uptime on this part is a lot easier as opposed to MLC or even APOC. So in Pure Fiction, this Lightcone is usable. It's still worse than the other ones, but still does work. For relic sets, this does depend for the best in slot. If you're not really running another action advancer, or you have very specific tuning, or your action advancer is RMC specifically, because then it makes this a lot easier, then you would be using Eagle, with the 2-piece being useless. 4-piece, after the wearer uses their ultimate, their action is advanced forward by 25%. Argenti is ult spamming. He's going to be using ultimates super frequently, so the 4-piece here is getting procced very often. So not only can you do stuff like attack boots to get up to breakpoints with enough ultimates proc, even at higher thresholds you can spam to get to higher breakpoints with speed builds. There's a lot of stuff you can do with Eagle. Just be sure it's actually netting you something. Doesn't exactly always have to be an extra turn. As long as it gets you to a breakpoint that doesn't matter, then it's going to be good. Especially in Pure Fiction, you're going to see this proc a lot more, because that's always 5 enemies on the field. You're going to be killing them frequently, so you get even more energy. So the 4-piece is just procking so much, which is why Eagle actually has the highest potential. The reason I say it just with RNC specifically for an action advancer or no action advancer is because it just becomes a lot harder to control when you're running Eagle with another character that has a set speed with action advance. So like Sparkle or Sunday, it becomes a lot harder to manage the Eagle set, and so that's why I don't necessarily recommend it with them. With RMC, it's a lot more infrequent, so it is more manageable with RMC. But other than Eagle, then you would just use Scholar instead, with 2-piece increasing crit rate by 8%, 4-piece providing 20% damage to skill and ultimate, and after using ultimate, the next skill's damage will increase by 25% additionally. 2-piece is just helping with his build. 4-piece provides his increase to the main source of damage, being the ultimate, and also impacting his skill and further impacting the skill, which is a little more unfortunate. If it impacted his ultimate a little more, that would be better, but still, his skill does contribute a solid amount. So the 4-piece of Scholar is very useful and is very much complementary to his playstyle. So you're also going to be getting a nice increase to both his ultimate and skill damage, with ultimate getting 20% and skill getting up to 45%. The physical set also does work with him, with the 2-piece increasing physical damage by 10%. 4-piece after the wearer attacks or is hit, they gain 5% attack for the rest of the battle, stacking up to 5 times. 2-piece will increase all his sources of damage. 4-piece gives you up to a 25% increase to attack, which is pretty solid. This is worse than the other 2 options I did mention, but if you do have pieces laying around, you can use it. It depends on the team on how fast you stack this. If you are running a hyperspeed support, then you can get his actions really quickly. He gets a skill, then he gets to ult, you can get 2, and then depending on how many times you get hit, maybe. Usually it's not going to take super long to the point it'd be detrimental to stack it, but it still can vary. Other than that, you would run 2-piece, so you can do 2-piece of the crit set. So if you need crit rate, 2-piece Scholar or 2-piece World Remaking for 8% crit rate. Crit damage would be Wave Shatter or Everglorious for 16% crit damage. A different combination would be with the attack percent set, so 2-piece Hero, 2-piece Wind Soaring, 2-piece Prisoner, or 2-piece Musketeer, or any of those with 2-piece Champion for the physical damage. For planar ornaments, since Argenti is mainly in pure fiction, you can use Unclaimed Desolation, and this fully stacked is his best in slot, providing 4% crit rate and a 4% crit damage increase anytime an enemy target is defeated, stacking up to 10 times. So it's 4% crit rate and up to 40% crit damage. So when this is fully stacked, it's very strong. It's just outside of pure fiction, you're not really going to get it stacked. So when it is fully stacked, it is his best in slot overall. And since he is primarily in pure fiction, that's why this is actually quite recommended. However, if you are using him outside of pure fiction, then instead of that, I would recommend just doing Inner Solsato instead, as it provides 8% crit rate. Reaching 50% crit rate or higher will increase damage dealt by Ware's ultimate and follow attack by 15%. Extra crit rate for the build, 50% shouldn't be a difficult requirement, and it impacts his main source of damage being ultimate. Unfortunately, it doesn't have a follow-up attack, so just ultimate damage increases by 15%. So this would just mainly impact his ultimate. If you're building him with speed, then you can use Glamoth, 12% attack, and then Ware's speed reaching 135/160 increases the Ware's damage by 12%/18%. Attack will increase all his forms of damage and also will the damage percent. Usually you will never really get the full 18% as you don't build Argenti that fast. You usually would be building with speed to breakpoint, and then if you're doing -1, just 1 speed above your action advance support. So as long as you are getting 135 for the 12% damage, it becomes 12% attack and 12% damage, so that's impacting his ultimate and his skill, which makes it good. For the main stats on the relics, for the body, you are primarily going to run crit damage because he has a lot of forms of crit rate via his kit, potentially a light cone, teammates, and also even 2 pieces of scholar or something. However, if you happen to have a lot of crit damage and not enough crit rate, in that case, you can run crit rate instead. For the feat, you are looking at attack percent or speed. Speed primarily would go to if you're running a form of no action advanced sources or an infrequent solo one like RMC, and also if you are doing a -1 setup with Sunday. So in that case, if your Sunday is 136 speed, get Argenti to 137. And also for Eagle setups, if you're aiming for very high actions, then you would also build as much speed as you can for the said dedicated breakpoint you want to hit. Base speed would be if you are pairing him with Hyperspeed Sparkle, or if you are doing attack percent boots with Eagle, because with Eagle you need to get 2 Eagle procs, and you don't even need speed rolls just to get to the 134 action, so you can get 2 turns within the first MLC cycle and so on. So that is the other way you would run attack percent boots. For the orb, physical damage is better, but if you have a really good attack orb, feel free to use that, but mainly look for physical damage. For the link grub, you can do attack percent or energy regen rate. Energy regen rate, especially when you don't have too many turns. So if he just kind of like the solo get speed through his own turns and doesn't have Eagle or anything and no action advance, in that case, energy regen can help. But if you're pairing him alongside like a -1 setup with Sunday, or he is just having a team where he's getting a good amount of turns, in that case, you can run attack percent instead. For the substats, first, if you are running a speed setup, then focus on getting your speed tuning done. So for a -1, get your Argenti to 1 speed above the action advancer. And then if you're doing a specific Eagle setup, get to like Hyperspeed Plus or even higher if you are doing crazy stuff. And then if you're just doing a breakpoint Argenti, then all you need is 134. If you're doing Eagle setups or base speed Argenti with Eagle setups or without, then ignore speed entirely. Then you focus on crit rate, crit damage, attack percent. Crit rate, just be sure you have 100% in battle, which is very doable on Argenti. Crit damage, you're aiming about 160% or higher. Attack would depend if you're running speed or attack boots. If you're running speed, then you can aim for around 2500. If you're running attack boots, then ideally you're aiming for 2900 or above. But again, with crit damage and attack, just get as much as you can. There's not necessarily a limit. Now for some general team building ideas for Argenti. The easiest one to get out the way is just going to be the other air edition slot for the Herda, so I'm just going to knock that out of the way before getting to the main Argenti carry teams. I don't have the Herda, so pretend here the mini Herda is going to be the Herda. Third slot usually would go to Tribi here, as Tribi is best with the Herda, especially because her buffs are really good, and also since she is AoE based. Last slot would go to Sustain. In here, you can just use someone like Promezzatere Daning. Poho also does work. Aventurin is fine. If you're able to manage skill points, you can very much use Hyacine as well. She becomes one of the best if you can actually manage skill points. But for simplicity's sake, I'm just going to put Daning since he does just do everything good all around. His buff is good for the Herda. His shields are unbreakable. He also has the AoE attack with his enhanced dragon. So the team would look something like this, and then you would sub out accordingly. If you don't have Tribi, you can just throw in someone like RMC in that slot instead, just to buff the Herda mainly. Ideally, you have AoE buffers, but sometimes it just doesn't work out, especially nowadays when you need a lot more damage. So throwing in someone like Ruan Mei might not suffice too much, depending depending on your investment. You can also use someone like Cypher here as a good debuffer, or even someone like OG Silverwolf. But yeah, that's kind of how you'd go about the Herta teams. Now, specifically for Argenti, if you're doing Eagle setups, then running an Action Advancer alongside him might be a bit difficult. So with a actual Eagle setup, in that case, you would not mainly be running the Action Advancer because, again, it'd be really hard to tune. But if you were to use one still, then usually it would go to someone like Sparkle, especially after her buff. Sparkle is just so good. Usually it would go to Sunday, but again, Sparkle's buffs are just super good, and Argenti gets a lot of energy just by using a skill anyways nowadays. But yeah, first let's just go off general stuff. So generally, you can just use the generic supports for him. You can throw on someone like Tribi. If you want another sub DPS part, you can use Cypher. You can even use someone like Astral, since his defense shred applies to everyone on the team. And then if you have some vertical on Astral, he has vulnerability, which is very good. Last slot would go to your sustain, so Danheng works good. Popo works great, especially for energy for Argenti. So you can run something like this. If you are running an Action Advancer, specifically with Eagle, I mainly recommend RMC because this is where the tuning isn't as difficult. Since RMC has a more infrequent Action Advance, so there's a lot of times where you can actually have Argenti's turns proc, get the extra turn, and then have Mem go after that, as opposed to someone like Sunday or Sparkle, which will have their consistent rotation. So RMC works great there, and then you can just put in the slots that I did mention, as they are mainly going to be unchanging. So let's just go ahead and do something like this for an example, or even something just like this, or you can even use OG Silverwolf here. Welt also does work after his buffs. He makes it a lot better for sustainless spots. So if you're running RMC plus Welt, it's going to be where enemies don't attack you much, so you are more safer to do sustainless, but you still just got to be sure to be careful. Last slot goes to whatever support you do have available in there. So again, you can pretty much throw Tribi, because what team is Tribi not on nowadays? Can throw on someone like Cypher as well. You can even throw someone like Asheville, as a Asheville Weld core is very good. Good amount of options there. And then for times where you are actually running the Action Advance, if you're doing base speed Argenti, it's Sparkle. If you're doing -1, then mainly Sunday. And then the last two slots is very, very much the same, so just something like this. And then another solid spot for this part, especially for the third support, is actually Tingyun, just because her energy buff is really good and she can hold Dance 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 very well. That's why Tingyun also does work. And that is the full 4.2 updated Argenti guide. I do hope you found this video helpful. If you did, dropping a like would be greatly appreciated. If you're new to the channel or haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe and turn on the bell icon for future videos like this, along with all other types of style content. And I'll see you later. Peace out.